All right, so we're recording. I think you guys know me, but I haven't seen some of you or shared my video maybe during session. So I'm Jenny Washington. I'm one of the implementation managers here at Passageways for Onboard. I've been here for 2.5 years, and I came from higher education, so I do specialize with our education clients, although I also work with others, as is evident by some of you, or at least one of you on the call today that is not in education. So I'm happy to have you all join me today. I mentioned already, but you are allowed to talk, meaning I've set it so that you can unmute yourself, and happy to have you unmute and ask questions or provide comments during the session, or if you want to use the chat, whatever you're comfortable with. I do want this to be interactive, but I have a lot of information to cover, so I'll be moving pretty quickly. So this is one of 3 different sessions that I've been doing in an attempt to offer opportunities for groups to get together and maybe spark some conversation amongst yourselves. This session happens to be on like the core features and functionality of Onboard. So these topics that you see on the screen are the ones that I am hoping to get through today. Some may be more in-depth than others, and I'll be happy to kind of tailor this to those that are attending live. So feel free again to let me know if you want me to pause on a topic or go into more detail or something of that nature, because I'm happy to do that. And if you haven't attended the other sessions, and I think some of you have, we've got advanced training, and it's broken into 2 parts because there's too much to do in one sitting. So tomorrow will be, I think, messenger tasks, some advanced permissions, and then also analytics, meeting analytics. And then on Friday this week, I'll be covering live the actions tool. So that would be your approvals for voting, your surveys, and your e-signatures. So I'm going to use my demo account of Onboard. So let me flip over there. I'm just going to check and make sure. I think you guys can see my screen. Let me know if not. But I am now in my Onboard organization that I use to practice and demo and things of that nature. So I'm going to be glancing over here where I have my kind of outline for today. And just really quickly, I think this would be familiar to you all, or just a quick refresher. Down the left-hand side, right, we have the main navigation. And depending on what plan or package of Onboard you have, you may or may not have all of these features that you see here. So everyone has the dashboard landing page, although not everybody has this detailed panel view. Some of you might just have announcements. If you have the full dashboard with all of the different panels, like upcoming meetings, announcements, resources, I'll be talking a little bit about how to think about leveraging that. Then the calendar, everyone has the calendar. That's where all of your meetings as well as events go. And then actions is this piece that I mentioned I'll be doing a portion of advanced training on, which is the approvals, surveys, and e-signatures. Notifications, that would be where everything goes. If a system-generated email goes out, it'll also post here to the notifications. Everyone has resources, which is the unlimited repository, where you can put folders, you can nest subfolders, you can put other things besides just documents in here, so keep that in mind. The directory is the foundation, right? That's where your users go, and that's where you create groups to segment your different stakeholders, and you use these groups when you are giving access or permission to things inside of Onboard. So then Messenger starts to move us into where perhaps not all of you have this feature. If you have it in your menu and you select it, it may actually just show you a preview. So if you don't actually have this as part of your plan and you'd like to learn more, you'll be able to click into that. The same thing with tasks. So tasks is one of our newest features, and it's available to all users if you have tasks. If you don't have tasks, it would be a preview page that, again, gives you the opportunity to learn a little bit more. And then everyone has help. And I'm going to pause here because we have lots of different opportunities for you to learn about Onboard and for different learning styles. So obviously you have, in our customer success team, you have an implementation manager, me, then long-term you'll be placed with a customer success manager. And for many of you, that will be Dean Floyd, who works with our education groups. And then for financial institutions, it's probably going to be Gabe Smith. But nonetheless, you have access to us for kind of guided one-on-one sessions to work on specific things relevant to your goals and your use cases. But inside of Onboard, you also have opportunities. So in the help, this is actually customized depending on your role. So if you have your readers or members and they access help, their use cases will be specific to things like managing their user profile, how to vote, how to respond to a survey, etc. When you as an admin access use cases, it will be more of how to create a meeting, how to make an announcement, and so on. So feel free to use those use cases as well as our full help center. And then I want to point out here that throughout Onboard, and I'm just going back to the directory, you might see these little question marks that would give you details, definitions of things, kind of tool tips. So they're quite subtle, but definitely look for them. They're little gray question marks. So those are some different avenues that you can get help. I want to mention a couple of things about permissions and about the directory next. So I think once you've established your directory, for the most part, you'll just be moving people in and out of groups, or maybe you want to update their profile information. So I want to point a couple of these things out that might not be as apparent. So when you click on someone's name here, it will actually open up their user profile. And administrators of Onboard have the edit capabilities. So you can go in, you can add pictures, you can add other profile details, and then down here at the bottom is where their email notifications are turned on. Now, by default, when they activate their accounts, those should automatically get enabled. So this is just a fictitious person, so they don't have their email notifications turned on. Otherwise, that circle would be filled in. So that would be one way to check and know, are they getting the email notifications as they should. The other thing that I wanted to point out is this additional notification email. If you have users who would like to get their email notifications about Onboard to their primary email address, as well as to maybe an alternate email address, like maybe their personal email address, or if they have an assistant, you can actually go in and fill in this information. It is private, so it's not part of the public-facing profile of your users. So they should feel comfortable if they want to use this, they can put their information in. Or if you know that when you email that person, you always copy an assistant, you can put their information in here for them. Now, they aren't users, so this is just basically sending a copy of any email notifications to that additional email address. So wanted to point that out because sometimes that is not very well known or commonly known. Something else I want to point out is if you have other individuals that are backups to you. So more than one person is an admin, and you can have as many admins really as you want in a directory. So you have the different role options. Administrator's the highest level. Creator would be one step down. So a creator would be someone who might be a liaison for a committee and you want them to create their own committee meetings, or maybe they help with specific events and they need to be able to create surveys. You can make them a creator. They cannot manage the member list. So a creator cannot add someone new to the member list or remove someone from the member list, as an example. And then member would be, by and large, you know, your user base, your directors, your leadership, and other staff, and just, you know, your members. And then deactivate is something you might do if you have term limits and someone basically is kind of falling off for a period of time. You can deactivate them instead of deleting them. And that would mean they can't sign in if they're deactivated. They also don't count towards your total subscription licenses. So if you have a certain number of user licenses that are part of your agreement, if someone is deactivated, they're not counting towards that. And it's very easy to reactivate them, or if someone is on maternity or paternity leave or something like that, as compared to deleting them. And then I often get questions about maybe misspelled names, or someone who has changed their email address. Maybe they've moved to a different company or they've retired. So those things, name and email address, are things that even as an admin, you cannot just go in and modify. And that has to do with how we hold users in our database, how we have our ability for you to reset passwords, and some other things like that. So I understand that that can sometimes be a point of frustration. A couple things that you can do. One, if they are active, give them the instructions on how to correct either maybe a formal first name to move it to an informal, you know, Jennifer, Jenny. If they move and they need to change their email address and they still have access to their other email account, all they have to do is go down to their profile and settings. And then obviously this is where they can change their name. And then if they need to change their email address, they can simply click on that change onboard ID, put in their new email address and confirm it, and they'll be sent a code that they would paste in, and that will execute the change. Now, if they haven't activated their account, you can remove them and re-add them into your directory to fix some of those things if it was a typo. But the nice thing about having them do it is if they have their profile information set up, you already have them in groups, you want to preserve that. And by them making the change themselves, that preserves their profile information, those details, it preserves their group assignment. And if you're not using groups, I would strongly encourage you to leverage the groups. Even if you only have a single group, maybe a board of directors group or a board of trustees group, it's still best to actually put your individual member list into a group so that you can save yourself some time and potential errors when you're setting permissions. You might want to make a group for every committee. You might want to make a group called portal admins. So if you have multiple administrators that could be creating things in Onboard, it's a good idea to have a portal admin group. And then as part of creating things, you want to be in the habit of giving that portal admin group admin permissions. So when you create a meeting and you go to set permissions to the meeting, the first thing you would do is find this group and make this group an admin. That way, any of you would be able to collaborate on that particular item, whether that's a meeting, a resource folder, a survey, or something in the actions. So that comes in handy. The other thing too is testing. So if you don't have a test account, you might wish to maybe add yourself to the directory using maybe your personal email address, and then treat that account as a specific persona, like a board member or maybe a non-voting member who's part of a committee. And that way you can use that test account to sign in and see what it looks like to that persona. So that would mean you'll want to put that persona in any groups that they should be a part of, right? So if they're maybe a non-board committee member, put them in one of your committee groups. And then when you sign in, you'll see anything that that committee has access to and visibility to. So those are some tips there around your directory. Another thing is we have this feature that's called Remote Wipe. So if you have a member who maybe has an iPad or a phone and they have the mobile app on it, and maybe they lose their device, if they notify you that they lost their device, you will probably want to come and implement this remote wipe feature. So in the member list here, when you hover over someone's name, there are these 3 dots, and you can, well, this person's deactivated, so let me go to someone else. You can say wipe devices remotely. Now what that means is any cached information, meeting information, or resource information that's on the mobile app on their device associated with their account, it will clear that off of the app. And that way, if it gets into the wrong hands or something like that, all of your, sensitive information, confidential information is not accessible if for some reason they were able to authenticate into the app. Now, let's say I thought I lost my device, but I found it. That's okay. The next time I log in, it'll actually reload all of that material, okay? So just keep that in mind, that wipe devices remotely option. Any questions on kind of this information, the directory, or just the general navigation? Hopefully all of that was either a refresher or, but let me know, because some of you are newer to Onboard. Okay. And again, just one more tip here. If you want to add a user but not actually invite them in so that they really can't see anything quite yet, whenever you're adding someone in, you can always uncheck this box so that it will put them into the directory, but it won't actually invite them. And then they'll just be in your directory here with the ability for you to reset and send them their password, their activation information. Okay. I want to move quickly over here to the dashboard and give you guys a couple of reminders here. Make sure that the next time you look at your dashboard, go and click on the organization info. Make sure that you have a logo on this view instead of just a logo placeholder. This logo that appears under your organization info is the one that is presented on the organization selection page. So when someone signs in, they first land on a selection page. That way, if they're part of multiple boards using Onboard, they can go in and out very easily. And this logo here is the one that would display to them. So under organization info, which I got to from the dashboard. Also fill in this other information at the top. And then take a quick glance down, just because you may have not visited this page in a while, or if you got started and you really didn't spend time looking at this, just do a review. It has your time zone, so make sure that that's accurate. And then there are certain features that you can disable if you want, as well as special additional security that you can enable, such as the app security. And I really do usually recommend that you turn this app security on. What it does is when people use the mobile app, it will require them to, in addition to putting in their email address and their password, they'll have to set either a PIN, or they can use their fingerprint or facial recognition to more securely launch the app. But more than just being an additional security feature, really the benefit to your users is they have to have one of those additional authentication pieces in place, like the PIN or the biometric. in order to use the app offline. So when they have that additional security enabled, that means that if they go on an airplane and they put their device in airplane mode, they can still launch the app and use it to view materials even when they don't have Wi-Fi or any kind of connectivity. So it really does benefit them. It also helps, let's say they're in a meeting and they're looking at the app and then they need to go check their email. Well, when they come back to the app and it makes them re-authenticate, they're not going to have to sit there and type in their email and password, right? They're just going to be able to put their thumbprint on or hold it up and have it do the facial recognition or put a quick 4-digit PIN. So that one I do recommend. Okay. I do want to mention on the dashboard, it often gets underutilized. So keep it refreshed. Be thoughtful about if you have something you want to send out to your users, rather than send an email, think about maybe putting it as an announcement. It could be, you could have announcement panels for different types of things. So you can always modify your dashboard panels by clicking that edit panels and then looking at what panels you have on your dashboard and what available panels. And you can have more than one. As you can see here, I have 2 welcome panels. I have an announcement panel here, which is titled Upcoming Events. And then I have another announcement panel, and it's called just Announcements. So you can reorder them. So you can drag and reorder them. You might want to give really like high priority to your meetings and less priority to things that aren't as important. So you can reorder them. You can delete them if you're not using a panel, and you can bring more over. And so here's my 2 welcome panels. Here's my upcoming meeting panel, which is really important. And then here I have, let me just refresh this. Here I have my announcements panel and some different examples. So anytime you, instead of sending an email, think about posting it as an announcement. And I'd be happy to go into more detail with anybody about some tips on that or some examples, but you can even put links. So this is basically saying there was an update to the meeting, right? Sometimes you publish a meeting and then you get new materials, or maybe there was a correction. You make that correction or that addition in the meeting, but then Onboard doesn't automatically send out anything telling them what was changed. So here, the announcements is a good way to, instead of sending an email, use the announcement to be specific about what changed, right? So you can type that in here just like you would into the body of an email. And then you can put a hyperlink. Okay, great. How do I put a hyperlink to a meeting? It's actually quite simple. If you are in your calendar and you are clicked onto a meeting, this URL, this long onboard.passageways.com meeting URL is specific to this page, to this meeting. So you can copy this, you can go to your dashboard, and in the announcement, put the details about what changed, then paste the URL for the meeting, and then you can give it an easy, friendly link name that they see over here on the left that they click on instead of that really long, kind of ugly URL. You can also pin announcements, which forces it to the top if you have multiples. Don't forget to select which groups should see the announcement. You can add an optional image. If you set the expiration date, it'll automatically delete upon that date. So Onboard will just automatically delete that announcement. Here's where I've noticed some people get really tripped up on this publishing and notify. If I make a change, a very minor change, let's say, I don't have to hit notify to save the change. So sometimes I'll see when I'm a part of your organizations, that I'll get multiple emails of an announcement being published or updated. I think that tends to be just a misunderstanding of the notify and the publish feature. So for example, let's say I want to make a new announcement. And let's say I don't want an email to go out. I just want people to see the announcement when they log in. The way that you do that is you craft your announcement, and then the description. Don't yet set any groups. If I publish this without any groups, it did not send an email because it didn't know who to email. So now this is published. And I know that because one, it doesn't have the word draft over here on the left. And I also noticed that instead of saying publish, it says notify. So what I can do is I can say, okay, this is just for the board. And I don't want them to receive an email. So I'm not going to hit notify. I'm simply going to return. And now this announcement has updated, meaning if I'm part of the board of directors group and I log in, I will see it, but I did not receive an email. So that's a little tip or trick on announcements and deciding if you want an email to be sent or not. Another kind of tip here to keep your dashboard really serving you the best is think about what resources you have that you might want to display. And yeah, so a question about the announcement. When you select a group for an announcement, only those in that group will see it. And only they will get an email if you set the group before you published and you publish, or you make a change and you hit notify. So this dashboard creates a personalized view for each person. Everything that you can do here, with the exception of the welcome panel, has permission. The welcome panel is the only type of panel where you don't set permissions. The upcoming meetings will only display meetings that people have permission to and that are, visible depending on the meeting visibility. The announcements have the groups that you have to set. And then we also have, sorry, I'm scrolling. We also have these resource panels. So here, I wanted to display my policies and bylaws on my dashboard. So in my resources, I have a folder called Policies and Bylaws. Each folder in your resources has permissions. Over here on the right are 3 dots where I can access the submenu. Don't forget to set your permissions on your folder because it's not very obvious, right? So when you create a new folder, if I simply go create a new folder by clicking Add, New Folder, and I just give it a test folder. Nobody can see this folder but me. When I come over here and click the 3 dots and, sorry, I need to move that out of the way, manage permissions, and I look and see who's permissioned, only I am permissioned. So make sure you don't forget that when you create new folders, you also have to set permissions on them. And when you are setting permissions using this flyout panel, start with your groups. You took the time to create those groups and put the right people in the group, so don't forget to use them, right? So I can very easily say I want the board of directors group to see this, as well as I want to make sure my portal admins can all be administrators. So here I'm using my portal admin group, and I'm going to change it from reader to administrator. And now anyone in my portal admin group is an administrator of this folder with me. So start with your groups. So now I've given the board of directors group permission and my portal admin to my test folder. If my test folder contains some kind of important document, so let's add a document. You can drag and drop your documents. So here I have this PDF. I'm just dragging it over, dropping it. And if I want the board group who has permission to get an email, I can say, yes, notify members with access to this folder, and they will get an email letting them know that I added this Onboard Mastery Series PDF. So it's unchecked by default. So if I don't want an email to go out, I'll just upload it. There it is. This PDF inherits the permissions that I set on the folder. Whatever permissions I set at the parent level, everything inside there inherits those permissions. So now I've got this test folder, and let's say I want that to be a spotlight on my dashboard. So I come down where I have a resource panel. So here, or let's just add one. So let me edit the panels. I'm going to grab a resource panel, and for the sake of not making you guys dizzy and me scrolling, I'm going to drop it at the top. So now I have this resource empty panel. I'm coming over here to edit it. And I can give it a name as soon as it catches up with me here. There we go. So I don't want it to say supplemental materials. Maybe I just want it to say important, you know, read first or something, whatever the case might be. Then down here, I'm saying I want this to point. So I'm selecting which resource folder I want this to point to. And I'm going to pick my test folder. And that's going to update, and whatever's in my test folder is now appearing. But who can see this? Well, I gave that test folder permission to the board of directors group and the portal admin. If I am not part of those groups, I don't see the documents on the dashboard. The other thing too is, let's say, down here, I have this pointing to some virtual meeting resources. And you can see that it has 4 listed, but over here on the right, it says this is one to 4 of 5. Well, I don't want people to have to click see all, right? So I'm going to click edit and say to display 6 things at a time instead of only 4. Now all 5 are displaying and they don't have to click see all. So that's another tip as well. So that's what I'm going to do on the dashboard. I'm going to then kind of move into the meeting and make sure and show you guys in the calendar all the different tips about creating your agenda and using some of the section details. So I'll just wait and see if there's any follow-up questions on the dashboard. Okay. So the calendar really is the heart, right, of Onboard. Onboard is a meeting management platform. In the calendar is where you create your meetings, but you can also put events in here because it's going to display them in chronological order. So maybe you have an upcoming event like a golf tournament and you want to put that in here. Maybe there's a flyer. You could even add an agenda item and attach the flyer. So it doesn't have to be just for meetings. And make sure that your committees are using it, not just for the full board, ideally. If you're in education, your cabinet, your president's cabinet usually attends meetings and they themselves have weekly meetings. Consider having the president's cabinet hold their meetings in Onboard, right? They're already users. So think about your user list and any meetings that they have that are outside of the board or committee meetings. It could be internal operational meetings. Maybe you have marketing communications meetings. If you have enough licenses to have those additional staff, they can use them for those unit or kind of functional or operational meetings as well. A couple things before I actually create a meeting is to make sure that you know that you can copy a meeting and that you can also archive a meeting. So any meeting, and if I was going to copy, it's probably going to be a past meeting. So let me go down here a little ways. So let's say every year we do strategic planning. And maybe the agenda is relatively the same. Instead of rebuilding the meeting, you can copy any of your meetings. So when you go into the past or the upcoming and you hover over a meeting, those same 3 dots that we have used before lets you access the submenu. And here I can copy a meeting. And if you click on copy, you want to give it a few seconds. It's telling me that it was copying in the lower right. And now as soon as the copy is ready, it opens it up and I can see that I'm in the copy. So copying meetings will copy over the agenda. It'll strip away the documents, right? Because those are the things that change meeting over meeting. If I needed to edit the agenda, I could easily go into the compose agenda and let's say maybe there's something between guiding principles and next steps. So I could add another section very easily. So you can make some minor modifications to that copied agenda. I could even move things, so I can grab it and move it up. And because I was kind of holding the mouse over it, it created it as an A, so I can just come and unindent it, and now it's put it back in line. So you can make those changes to a copied meeting. It also will copy over your permissions. So whatever permissions you have set on that meeting, it will copy those forward. It will also copy over settings. And settings is something that gets underutilized. So settings is where you can turn on page numbers. I had a group in the last couple weeks who told me they were just about ready to manually add page numbers to the whole PDF. And I said, no, no, no. You just have to go into settings and you can turn that feature on. You can also use our table of contents feature, which will create a cover page that basically is taking your agenda and turning it into a table of contents that also displays page numbers so that it creates a first page to your digital book. So don't forget about the settings. So here I'm still in the copy, right? I could remove the word copy and advance the date to the actual real date and then do any other modifications. If I go back to the calendar, there's my copy and I can just delete that. Or I can archive it. So let's say this is a meeting that has occurred and the minutes from the meeting have now been finalized and approved. Now I'm free to go ahead and archive this. So archiving will lock it down so that you can't make any changes to the agenda, you cannot make changes to the supporting materials that are uploaded, but people can still view the materials. So they can still access the meeting. You're basically just locking it down to where no changes can be made. So when I click on archive, it's going to tell me it's permanent. And then if I say yes, the meeting doesn't go anywhere. It stays where it is. In this case, I archived a meeting under the upcoming, which normally this would be in the past. But you see it just added this kind of watermark that says this is an archived meeting. And if I click on it, you'll notice I no longer have compose agenda. I can't edit. I only can view the information. The only thing that you could do is give someone new access. So let's say somebody, new joined the board and you want them to have access to this archived meeting. You can modify the permissions and, add more people or remove people with access. So that's what archiving is. It doesn't get used very often, but it is a feature nonetheless, so I wanted to show that. So copying and archiving, what about other details? So let me pick a meeting here and show you some things that you can be doing. Okay, so even if you are not wanting to use our Zoom integration, so the integration of onboard with Zoom, you can still use the setup remote meeting details and paste in your Zoom or your Teams or your GoToMeeting, WebEx, whatever that might be, even if it's just a telephonic meeting, just a conference phone number. You don't have to use our integration, even if you are a Zoom customer. You can just simply paste that in. And then I, as an admin, don't see it. It's behind the button. If I click Finish Editing, I can now see the Zoom information. So that's another little tip here is, as part of kind of quality checking your work before you publish a meeting, you might want to use that Finish Editing button. It's not required. You don't ever have to click on it. It just simply toggles your view slightly so that this portion up here takes upon a read-only view, and I can see my remote meeting details, and it also changes the button to show what a reader of the meeting would see. So, for example, as an admin, I can see a button called Attendance. As an end user, I don't have attendance, but I do have RSVP. So if you are wondering, where do people RSVP? It's because you can't see the button unless you have that test account that you're playing with, or you click on that Finish Editing. And now you can see, oh yeah, this is how the RSVP works. So all they do is click on it. They say if they're going to be attending or attending remotely, and oh wow, look, they can put it on their calendar. So that's how the RSVP works. From the admin perspective, you have the attendance button, and you can see that I RSVP'd that I was attending remotely. And then during the meeting, you can actually mark how did they attend? Did they attend at all compared to what they intended? So I could use this for roll call. You don't have to. These two things can operate independent of each other. People can use the RSVP and not use the attendance. You cannot use RSVP, but use the attendance, right? So, and you can export a report. And then to make sure that you know all the different capabilities that you can do within your agenda, you'll see here I have a date out to the side. It could also be a time. So if on your agenda, your chair likes to have the times as guidelines, you can put those out to the side here. So it can be it can be text or it could be a time. And when you go into the edit, sorry, let me get rid of that. When you go into the edit of the agenda item, you'll see that in this flyout, you have all kinds of other things. You can keep it very simple and just leave it with just the title of that agenda section. You could add the time like I did here, which displays out to the left. If I had talking points, maybe I don't have a document, I could use the description field. And as I type them on the right, then they automatically show on the left, so you can see how that will display. Maybe this was an item requiring action. I've seen some groups put the word like action, or maybe update or info, or categorize, so that very easily as you look at the agenda, you can tell, is this something that requires action? Is it just for information, or what the case might be? The other thing that people don't realize or they forget is that you can drag and drop your documents. So even right here on the agenda, let's say I've got the agenda ready to go, and now I'm ready to add my supporting materials. You can actually, from this screen, open your file manager and go to whatever folder that you have, and you can drag documents over and drop them right onto the agenda item. And down on the bottom, it tells me it's uploading, tells me it's complete, and then over here to the right, the arrow is what indicates to me that I have this document. So take advantage of the drag and drop capabilities if you're not. And if I don't want this document here, I can just go into edit, go down, hover over the document and delete it. You can also rename documents. So maybe I don't want it to say sample. And also if I have 2 or more documents and I want to reorder them, there's some faint gray dots over here that you can use to drag and reorder your files even after they're already attached to an agenda item. You can also add your presenters. So I noticed most groups will have their presenter on the same line as the title of the agenda, but you can make it be so that it shows right below if you use the presenter field. You can also do things like paste in URLs. This could be a resource URL. Here it's a video to a YouTube, and it's clickable. If I wanted to, let's say, let me say I have like a 200-page policy, and I don't want my board book to be 200 additional pages. If you have that document in your resources, you could go to your policies and bylaws, and maybe this corporate wellness program policy we're talking about. When you click on the document and it displays it, it's also giving me this URL that's specific to this corporate wellness policy. So I can copy the URL, and then I can go into the meeting, and then within the edit area, guess it doesn't really matter, but in the edit area, you just paste that into the agenda section description, and then it's a clickable link. It is gonna then open up and land me on that particular resource. So we'll let that load and I'll show you. Of course, it's gonna be a little bit finicky. Now, you have to remember that only the people with access to that resource document will be able to see it, right? So if they don't have access to that folder, then, and they try to click on a link, it will tell them that they don't, have permission. So now it just opened up that particular policy that I linked. So those are some extra things that you can do. Another one would be, I'm looking to see if I have an example in here. Maybe you need to add a break, or maybe you want to provide some guidelines for your virtual meeting, but it's not really an agenda item. So let's say I come over here to compose agenda and I add a section. Maybe I want that to be at the very top, and I can call it, guidelines for the meeting. So now I have this new first agenda item, but I don't really want it to have a number because my intro is not really number 2. So you can edit it and check this box to remove the numbering and omit it from the actual digital board book. And now it doesn't have a number associated with it. It's just a label. And, I could put some instructions in here Please, stay muted unless speaking, whatever that is. You could have a list of things. And anytime you're making some major changes, it's gonna prompt your book to rebuild. So you'll get this build scheduled with the countdown clock, but if you don't wanna wait, you can go ahead and say build the book now, and then it'll start to cycle through and build that, and you can see it's working its way through this section. So make sure you always quality check your work before you publish a meeting. And if you are newer, it's really important to understand that for meetings, the attendees and the visibility, so the visibility is up here and the attendees is here, they go together. So managing the attendees is where you say what groups and what individuals need to have access to the meeting. And then the visibility is what can they see. And you've got the little question marks here to help you out. So here you can see here are the different options for your visibility states, what they exactly mean before you apply them. So my book is almost done, and then I'm going to click on it and show you just a couple of things and see if you guys have any questions. Hopefully you picked up a few things that you weren't aware of, or maybe you remember hearing, but you haven't used. So now I'm going into the open book view. So this is the quality check of the work before you publish. This is also, of course, where all of those with permission to the meeting are going to be able to come and view the materials. Let's see. And of course, I don't have page numbers turned on for this one. So had I turned on under the settings, had I turned on the table of contents and the page numbers, that is going to trigger my book to rebuild again. And then you can look at that. So you can look and see, do I like it with page numbers on? If I put the page numbers in the bottom center and then I scroll through the materials, does it overlap something that's really important? Do I need to move the page numbers to the left or to the right? Very easy to make those changes. Okay. And we're not going to go into the advanced permissions, but I do want to mention, I'm finding it more common now that when you have committees, you might have senior leaders, right? Non-board members on those committees that develop materials. And since they own that material, oftentimes we'll have committee senior leaders and other staff liaisons be contributors to the meeting, so that you don't have to be the one to have them email all their stuff to you or drop it in some kind of a Dropbox. You have the platform, why not just have them put it right into Onboard directly? So you can actually say, maybe Nathan should be a reader of the meeting, but for this particular meeting, I want him to be a contributor. If I elevate Nathan to a contributor, he now will be able to go in and help work on the agenda and upload materials to any of the sections, because I'm making him a contributor of the meeting. Or I could leave Nathan a reader of the meeting, but maybe he is responsible for the 3 big things presentation. I can actually come to this particular agenda item and I can permission the members, and I can make Nathan a contributor of just that section. So he can only modify that section and upload his presentation to that section. For everything else, he's just a reader. So that's kind of the beginnings of kind of some of the advanced permissions. I'm not going to change that. So we'll look at this book now that I've put the page numbers on it in the table of contents. So now I have the page numbers in the lower right-hand corner, and it's just taking me back to the last page that I left off. So I come back up to the top where the table of contents is. That's now the first page is that table of contents. And if I make any changes, like I add documents, it'll update the page numbers so that this table of contents is always up to date. And then resources, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. I've already talked a little bit about how you make sure you have permissions to the folders. You'll notice that they do alphanumeric sort. So here I tricked it. I put these brackets, and so it forced it to the top. In the future, you'll have more control over moving and ordering or sorting your resources. For now, if you do want to kind of force sort something, you can do a little trick like I did here. I put brackets around it. Sometimes I'll put an asterisk in the beginning, and that will force it to the top. You can also number your folders to force rank them. If they are like meeting minutes and you want to organize them by year, and then here you can see this one has a number on it. You can also put the date in front of it. So I could rename this and put, let's say these were, if I say, let's say they're July minutes or June, if I just put June 21, it's going to sort it alphabetically, not by the month June, 6th. So otherwise I would do, I'd rename it and do, 06/21. If I want to have them actually order chronologically, not alphabetically. So there's a couple of tips there with resources. And then also don't forget that you can not only put documents in, but you can put hyperlinks in. So these represent hyperlinks. So I can go up here and say, I want to add a photo. I want to add a video. In fact, you're not adding a video. You would be adding a link to a video that's posted somewhere or any other type of a link, like to a website or an article. So it's not just for documents. And if you have a YouTube channel, you can even have it so that when you say add new video, you put the YouTube video URL, it'll actually play right here when you click on it. So those are some resources tips. Okay, well, I think we covered quite a bit of all the different core features. Don't forget to use the help. If you want to search for something, you'll want to use the Help Center and go to the guides and videos. That's what's going to open up this tab where you can search. So if you wanted to learn more about archiving, right, you can just start to type things in. So definitely use that if you like the self-help versus the guided walkthroughs or use cases. That will just kind of give you a tutorial or a tour of something. Any kind of parting thoughts or questions on your guys' side, or if you want to chat, you can do that also. Okay. All right, well, that concludes the session. You'll get a copy of the recording if you want to share that with anyone. If we don't have a one-on-one session scheduled and you'd like to dive deeper into any of this stuff or apply it to your meetings or your resources, just let me know and we'll get together on a one-on-one session. So I appreciate all of your time. Have a good rest of your week. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.